Blackwood Downs Country Club was a kingdom of old money and new ambition, nestled in rolling hills of impossible green. Its membership was a carefully curated list of the powerful and the privileged. The centerpiece of this kingdom, more so than the championship golf course or the stately clubhouse, was the Founder's Garden. It was a botanical masterpiece, famous for its collection of heirloom roses, particularly the Blackwood Beacon, a unique, deep crimson rose that grew nowhere else on earth. The garden was the club's soul, a testament to a century of tradition. And for the last 40 years, that soul had been in the care of Elias Washington. Elias was a fixture at Blackwood Downs, a man as deeply rooted as the ancient oaks that lined the fairways. He was in his early 70s, an African-American man with skin weathered by decades of sun and wind, and hands that, while calloused, could handle the most delicate rose petal with the tenderness of a surgeon. Most members saw him as part of the landscape, another feature of the club's rustic charm. They saw the humble groundskeeper, but they never saw the quiet majesty of the man himself, or the history that flowed through his veins. Tucked away in his modest home off the club grounds was a leather-bound scrapbook. It was filled with faded photographs and newspaper clippings of his father, the legendary course architect and co-founder of the club, standing proudly in the very garden Elias now tended. Another section held photos of a younger Elias, a golf prodigy himself, whose promising professional career was tragically cut short by an injury. He chose to stay on at the club, not as a member, but as a caretaker, finding more peace in nurturing his father's living legacy than in walking the halls as a patron. He was the silent guardian of his own birthright. The garden was his sanctuary, a continuous conversation with the father he had lost long ago. The established tranquility of Blackwood Downs was shattered by the arrival of Sterling Croft. Sterling was new money, a brash, 20-something hedge fund manager who had acquired his fortune with aggressive algorithms and a complete disregard for tradition. He saw the club not as a legacy to be honored, but as a status symbol to be flaunted, a stage for his success. He treated the club staff with a dismissive contempt, viewing them as invisible servants who existed solely for his convenience. Sterling decided to throw an extravagant summer gala to cement his position at the top of the club's social ladder. He had tents erected on the grand lawn, champagne fountains flowing, and a DJ whose bass line shook the leaves on the century-old trees. The party was loud, gaudy, and completely at odds with the club's understated elegance. That evening, as the sun began to set, Elias was conducting his daily ritual, the evening watering of the Founder's Garden. He knew that the Blackwood Beacon roses required a precise amount of water at dusk to achieve their full, velvety bloom. He moved with the quiet efficiency of long practice, his watering can arching in a gentle, silver stream. It was then that Sterling, holding court with a group of equally arrogant friends near the edge of the garden, felt a few errant drops of water splash onto his gleaming, hand-stitched Italian loafers. He stopped mid-sentence, looking down at his shoes as if they had been defiled. His face, flushed with champagne, contorted into a mask of rage. "You," he bellowed, his voice cutting through the party chatter. All eyes turned towards the old gardener. "What do you think you're doing? Are you blind?" Elias calmly finished watering the rose bush before turning to face him. "My apologies, Mr. Croft. The wind must have caught the stream. It is time for the rose's evening watering." Sterling strode over, his friends trailing behind him like hyenas. "The roses watering," he sneered, his voice dripping with condescension. "I have 100 of the city's most important people here, and you're worried about watering flowers? Look at my shoes. Do you have any idea what these cost? It's more than you make in a month, old man." A hush fell over the nearby guests. The club manager, a timid man named Peterson, began to hurry over, his face pale with anxiety. Elias's expression remained serene, though a flicker of disappointment crossed his eyes. "A drop of water will do them no harm, sir. But a missed watering can cause irreparable stress to a heritage bloom like the Blackwood Beacon." This calm, factual response only infuriated Sterling more. He felt his authority being challenged by a mere servant. "Irreparable stress," he mocked, laughing cruelly. "You think I care about a stupid flower? People like you are the problem with this place. You're relics. You're dirt diggers who don't understand progress. He then did something that made the onlookers gasp. With a vicious sneer, he stepped over the low boxwood hedge into the sacred soil of the founder's garden. He grabbed the main stem of the magnificent blackwood beacon rose bush, the very one Elias's father had planted on the club's opening day. Let's see how it handles some real stress, Sterling snarled. Sir, no. Please. Elias cried out, taking a step forward. For the first time, panic was in his voice. But it was too late. With a savage twist and a sickening crack, Sterling ripped the 70-year-old rose bush from the earth, its roots tearing free from the soil that had been its home for generations. He held it up like a vanquished foe and then threw the mangled plant at Elias's feet. There, Sterling said, breathing heavily, a triumphant glint in his eyes. Problem solved. Now get out of my sight. The crowd was in stunned silence. Even Sterling's sycophantic friends looked uncomfortable. The act was so needlessly destructive, so profoundly disrespectful, that it had crossed the line. The club manager, Mr. Peterson, finally arrived, wringing his hands. Mr. Croft. Sir. This is the founder's garden. Sterling scoffed. And? I'm a member. A platinum member. I pay this club's bills. I can do whatever I want. In fact, I want him fired. Now. I will not have my parties disturbed by incompetent staff. Get him off this property. Mr. Peterson looked from Sterling's furious face to Elias, who had knelt down beside the broken rose bush. The old gardener was gently touching its wilted leaves, his expression one of deep, personal grief, as if a family member had just been struck down. The manager, a man whose spine was made of jelly, made his choice. He chose the path of least resistance. Elias, he said, his voice barely a whisper. Perhaps it's best if you go on home. Elias looked up, not at the manager, but at Sterling. He didn't say a word. He simply gathered the broken, dying rose bush into his arms, holding it like a fallen child. He rose to his feet with a dignity that seemed to make him tower over everyone present. He gave one last, lingering look at the garden, his garden, and then turned and walked away. He walked through the gawking party guests, across the manicured lawn, and down the long, tree-lined drive, never once looking back. As Elias disappeared into the twilight, a cold silence settled over the party. The music seemed jarring, the champagne tasted flat. Sterling Croft, convinced he had just asserted his dominance, felt a small, unfamiliar prickle of unease. He had won the battle, but the quiet dignity of the old man he had exiled felt more powerful than his own hollow victory. He had no way of knowing that in tearing up that single rose, he had just torn up the future of Blackwood Downs itself. In the weeks that followed Elias's departure, a rot seemed to set into Blackwood Downs, and it had nothing to do with the trampled garden. An invisible decay was spreading through the club's finances. Membership renewals were down, and a few key old money families, disgusted by the public display of disrespect towards the club's traditions, had quietly resigned. The truth, known only to the board, was that the club was bleeding money. It was on the verge of bankruptcy. Their only salvation, their one Hail Mary, was the Centennial Cup, the most prestigious and lucrative golf tournament in the world. Hosting the cup would mean a massive influx of cash, media rights, and a restoration of the club's tarnished prestige. Blackwood Downs was one of two finalists. The final decision rested with the notoriously scrupulous Centennial Cup Committee, a body known for valuing history, tradition, and character above all else. Sterling Croft, oblivious to the club's dire financial straits, saw the Centennial Cup as his ultimate social conquest. He campaigned relentlessly, lobbying board members and boasting to anyone who would listen that his influence would secure the win. The final decision would be made after a formal site inspection by the committee, led by its legendary and reclusive chairman, a man known to the world only as Mr. A. Washington, an almost mythical figure in the golf world, known for his uncompromising integrity. The day of the inspection arrived. The board members, including Mr. Peterson, were sweating in their blazers, their forced smiles doing little to hide their desperation. Sterling stood with them, preening and ready to take credit for the victory he was sure was coming. A fleet of black cars pulled up the long drive. Several committee members emerged, but the chairman was not among them. "Mr. Washington will be joining us momentarily," a committee aide announced. He had a personal matter to attend to on the grounds first. Just then, a figure was seen walking towards them from the direction of the founder's garden. He was an elderly African-American man, dressed not in a suit, but in clean, simple trousers and a polo shirt. It was Elias. Sterling's face twisted in a sneer. "What is he doing here?" he hissed to Peterson. "I had him fired. Get him out of here before the chairman arrives." Peterson started to move, but one of the board members, an older man who had been on the board for decades, put a hand on his arm. His eyes were wide with a look of dawning, earth-shattering realization. "Peterson, wait," he whispered, his voice trembling. "A. Washington. Elias Anthony Washington." Elias stopped before the stunned group. He was no longer the stooped, humble gardener. He stood tall, his presence radiating a quiet, unshakable authority. He looked past Sterling as if he were a piece of furniture and addressed the committee's aide. "Is the entire board present?" he asked, his voice calm and clear, yet carrying the weight of command. The aide nodded respectfully. "Yes, Mr. Chairman." The words hit the group like a physical blow. "Mr. Chairman." Sterling's jaw dropped. His face went from flushed pink to ghost white in a heartbeat. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. The gardener he had humiliated, the old man he had cast out like trash, was the single most powerful man in the sport, the one person who held the club's entire future in his hands. Elias's gaze finally fell upon Sterling, and it was as cold and hard as granite. "Mr. Croft, I was just visiting a place of personal significance. A garden. I found a wound there, a scar on the land where something beautiful used to be." He then turned to the entire committee and the pale-faced board. "Gentlemen, for a century, Blackwood Downs has been more than a club. It has been a steward of the game's finest traditions. Of honor. Of respect. A club's character is not measured by the wealth of its members, but by how it treats its people and honors its legacy." He began to walk towards the clubhouse, the committee and board following like a silent, awestruck procession. Sterling, frozen in place, could only watch. "The Centennial Cup," Elias continued, his voice echoing in the sudden silence, "is not just a tournament. It is a celebration of the soul of the sport. We award it not to the fanciest clubhouse or the greenest fairway, but to the institution that best embodies that soul." He stopped and turned. "An institution is its people. It is the groundskeeper who knows the name of every flower, and the chairman who knows the name of the groundskeeper. When a club allows a man of commerce," he said, giving Sterling a final, dismissive glance, "to physically destroy a piece of its history out of sheer arrogance, and then sides with the destroyer over the caretaker, it proves it has lost its soul." He looked at the president of the board. "Blackwood Downs has a fine course. But its character, I am sorry to say, is no longer worthy of the Centennial Cup. The committee's vote is unanimous. Your bid is denied." A collective moan of despair went through the board members. Sterling looked like he was going to be physically sick. But Elias wasn't finished. "Furthermore," he said, his voice dropping, "as the sole surviving heir of the Washington founding family, I am exercising my rights as laid out in the original club charter. I am calling an emergency vote of no confidence in the current board for its gross mismanagement and failure to uphold the club's founding principles. And my first motion for the new board will be the immediate and permanent revocation of the membership of Mr. Sterling Croft for conduct unbecoming a gentleman." The downfall was swift and total. Sterling was disgraced, his name a toxic asset in the very circles he tried so desperately to conquer. The board was dissolved, and Mr. Peterson was fired. Elias, with the backing of the old guard families who returned upon hearing the news, oversaw the installation of a new leadership team dedicated to restoring the club's honor. Elias never took a formal position on the board. He had no desire for it. Once the changes were made, he simply returned to his garden. The club, under his guidance, brought in the world's best botanists to painstakingly save the roots of the original Blackwood beacon. Months later, a new, healthy shoot broke through the soil. Elias Washington, the chairman, the founder's son, the legend, spent his days on his knees in the dirt, nurturing that new growth with his own 2 hands. He remained the gardener, the silent guardian, having taught everyone that the strongest roots are not those of wealth or power, but of honor, respect, and a quiet, unyielding love for the legacy beneath your feet.